You're listening to Press This, a podcast that drives into the heart of WordPress and the community. I'm your host, Brian Gardner, WordPress advocate at WP Engine. Each week, I'll explore various topics, providing valuable insights and actionable tips for navigating the ever-evolving world of WordPress. You can subscribe to Press This on Red Circle, iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app. You can also download the episodes directly from WMR.fm. Hey everyone, welcome back to Press This. In the last episode of the podcast, Sam and I explored the profound impact of the WordPress community and how it plays a pivotal role in shaping the future of both WordPress, the software, and WordPress-based businesses. Today, we're going to shift a little bit, but I want to welcome back Sam, who was the community manager for developer relations at WP Engine. She's now part of the lifecycle marketing team. And welcome back, Sam.
Hello, Brian. Thank you for having me. So excited to be back on the podcast.
Sometimes I wish we could just talk about community as the entire podcast moving forward, because I love talking to you and we always have a lot to talk about. And our passion for communities, canyon wide and deep. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. I think community is obviously the word that we're using, but it's people. At the end of the day, it's people that power businesses. And so I think that that's something that you and I both share as a passion and just something that we always kind of keep at the heart of all of the work that we do.
Very true. And I will acknowledge that today's episode is inspired very heavily by a tweet, or however you choose to refer to these things these days, from probably at least a few weeks ago. The title of today's episode is Your Product or Service Needs a Community, which sort of gives away the next question I'm going to ask you. It's a true or false question, and I want to caveat this after I ask the question and before you answer with a little clarification behind the question. So, true or false? Your product or service needs a community. Now, let me clarify again. Product, in this case, is a digital product in the WordPress space, something like Genesis or Divi, which I know you're familiar with, Elementor type of thing. And a service, in this case, a little bit outside of WordPress, might be something like ConvertKit, an email marketing service, less of a product and more of a service-based thing. I guess hosting in WordPress could be considered something of that nature. So true or false?
Yes, true. True, your product or your service or SaaS product needs a community. It needs a group of people that are champions of it. But I'll stop there because it was just a true or false.
Well, I will follow up that then true or false question. Even before we get started with some of the questions I have here on our list, what inspired, I kind of know the answer at like a 30,000 foot level, but what specifically inspired, can recall that tweet or post?
Well, I guess I was thinking about how, at the end of the day, the most vibrant companies, the companies that have just like a huge, they have excitement around the brand, are the ones that value the people that make it possible to be in business. And that would be your community, right? So having a place or a space or just doesn't even necessarily need to be like a Facebook group or like a specific hub for your community, but having this emphasis on people and exchanging information and experiences as a company, I think is incredibly valuable. You have super fans that live in there that try out all your stuff and tell you what's good, what's bad, what works. They go talk to their friends, they tell their next friends, and then it's just like this big explosion that happens because of people, because of community. And so I think that I was just kind of thinking about that and like how just observing like the best brands inside of WordPress and outside of WordPress, but especially in like the online world for businesses that have products online or services online. The best ones, the ones that feel like the most energized, are the ones that value the people and give them a space or an opportunity to build a community amongst each other, centering their product.
One of the few moments back in the day, it's funny to say it that way, but it really was 15 years ago. So I guess that is back in the day, proverbially, with Genesis and the whole Studio Press thing. I remember all I set out to do was make some money and sell some things. While successful that was, a lot of that, the success I actually didn't know I was about to have. And as we merged Studio Press into Copyblogger and kind of through that transition as well, came about, and I'll use the word accidentally because I really never set out to build a community, but a community formed around Genesis And that was something that people always have mattered to me, even ahead of the Studio Press thing and long before my day job that led to me becoming sort of an entrepreneur. When I worked at a convenience store, the whole idea of people and customer service and getting to know folks or whatever, I learned at a very early age, even in my high school years, just sort of the importance of service and people and community and all of that. And I remember I didn't intentionally set out to build a community with Genesis, but I know how powerful that became, both in the success of it being the sales and revenue, but just also the brand recognition. Folks walked around with Genesis shirts and sort of wore them proudly at WordCamps and stuff like that. And the community got so big and so strong that we actually around WordCamp US's and even Chicago decided to do little Genesis meetups that would sort of piggyback off of those larger events where we knew that people were going to be in town anyways. And ahead of those events, we had people come in, and I think there were a few that I recall. WordCamp US in Nashville 5 or 6 years ago, probably had like 50 or 60 people at that meetup. Yes, I for sure agree. I don't know if they need a community as sort of we define the word need, but I think it strongly helps.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think, products and services can exist without communities. In many cases they do, but
Yeah.
WordPress, the community itself is sort of innate in people and how they consume and build and all of that. And so I think it's easy for people to sort of rally around products and services, especially ones that are led by people who obviously care about people and want to make change and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and there's obviously like different levels of this too, right? Like I was saying before, having like a spot for people to go and communicate about your product or your service is like one version of community. Having like a hashtag that you use that like unifies your tribe of customers is another way to form community. Just being in touch with your customers or with your clients or whatever you call them can also form community. So I think that there's lots of different ways, but the heart of it is like talking and interacting with people, having their experience with your product and like out in the real world, I think can really help shape the way that you move your product, right? So it's like looking at how people are actually using it and listening to them instead of just like building things in a silo. And I think that that's kind of a good way to think about it too, is as far as like the quote unquote need is like you have to be at some point and some level, if you're creating a product or a service for people, you have to be in touch and interacting with those people in some capacity. And the value of bringing them together in some way is that they can hear from each other and they can get inspired by each other around what you have created.
That's a great point. And what I will say is this, similar, and I always sort of compared on a much smaller scale, the Genesis community to just the WordPress community. I know that many people like myself became fans of WordPress and really flourished and wanted to partake in the quote WordPress community, mainly because yes, it was cool software, but it also, and I'll go down the rest of my life thinking this way, like I owe Matt and Mike Little, the co-founders of WordPress, a whole lot, because not only did it give me cool software to use and play with, it also changed my life. It changed my life from a money-making perspective, from a family perspective. We talked a little bit about that last week. Just the ability for that software to give me a way to make money, to quit a job, to live the dream, to do all of those things. And I think that's what happened with Genesis at one point is, and we can get into this a little bit later, the whole idea of having like a recommended developer or recommended experts group or page where people not only use and rally around the product or service, but they also then built their businesses on it. And so when you're able to find something that works for you and then build a business, and, if you're a stay-at-home mom or, a dad in my case, like any of those reasons, or just any of those things that just give us the opportunity to live our dream, you kind of like, hey, all of a sudden I really like this product and service because it's allowed me to do X. And then you kind of grow fond, and then you become a fan, and then you become an advocate, and we'll call it the street team, whatever you want to call them, community, I guess. Talk to me about your experience early on with Divi, because I know that Divi was a product that you used back in the day. And I know that you did lots of education around it. How did you use Divi to sort of build up some of your business and or sort of community or tribe?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this on our last podcast. I know I did. I wasn't in like the quote unquote WordPress community when I was in the thick of running my business. I was in very business focused groups. And then I found some that were a little bit more technical, Divi being one of them. I can't remember what the name of the Facebook group is, but it's like the Divi Facebook group by Elegant Themes. And I really enjoyed being in there because there were several reasons. I liked seeing the questions that people were asking and then feeling like I had the opportunity to give, just advice or thoughts. It was a great place for me to potentially pull business from, like someone's struggling with this, they're just looking for someone to help them. Cool, I can do that for you. It was good fodder for content that I was creating around Divi and just that. But mostly it was fun to see how like people would do a lot of knowledge sharing, which I know I shared that last time, just about the value of the WordPress community is all of the knowledge sharing. But I just enjoyed seeing how people were using the tool in different ways to achieve different things. And it's like, oh, I didn't even know you could do, I'm trying to think of a good example. They came out with a lot of new features when I was using Divi, and it was nice to see how people were using like the visual builder with their clients or playing with mobile optimization and things like that. So it was really good for gaining new information. And I think that's this community was just like living on its own, right? Once you kind of get a space thriving like that where people are just talking to each other, it didn't really require anyone from the company to do the start the conversation. It was more just people saying, hey, I need help on this, and people jumping in and wanting to be helpful, and then everybody learning from each other. So I found it really valuable from a business perspective, but also just from an educational perspective for myself, as well as I guess the human side too. It's like, here are other people who are building businesses with this tool, and it kind of validated my desire to use Divi as like my primary theme for my business because I saw all these other people using it as well. So that was a community that I was definitely a big part of, and it was fun, right? I would like create new videos and share it with everybody, and they'd be like, "Thank you, I didn't know how to do this," and someone else would make a video, and it was just really positive. And I think that especially with things like a pandemic that keeps everybody inside, or just being more spread out, and so you're not just like having this opportunity to walk into a coffee shop and meet a bunch of people as often. Some of us do that. A lot of us work remotely. Online spaces like this give you an opportunity to connect with other people. I'm an introvert. I'm not really like going to walk into a coffee shop and go like say hello to somebody, but I'll do it online. Like my third space, I don't know if you've ever heard of that expression, but my third space has always been an online space for the most part.
Yeah.
When I built my first little like HTML website thing, it was on this, it's funny to say this, but it was on Neopets. I was like 15 and I was talking with other people who were coding, and like we were in a little guild for it. And like third spaces for me have pretty much always existed online, and that works for my personality, and it works for meeting people all over the world. So Divi was a good space to get started for sure.
I seem to enjoy using analogies from my past to talk about things we are talking about here on the podcast. Last week, I made mention about how WordPress community was somewhat similar to the East Coast, West Coast hip hop era of the 90s. And I'm going to do the same thing here with communities in the sense of when I was in college, I went to Southern Illinois University. I was in a fraternity, Beta Theta Pi. And similarly, in a community, you get, there's like sort of the early stage and the middle stage and the late stage of that tenure. With the fraternity, you're a pledge, so you're the newbie, and you come in and you've got, brothers that are older than you and have been in the fraternity longer. And so they take you under their wing and so on. And so there's a process of like a metamorphosis there where you become that in a couple years down the road, where then you're the older brother and the new pledges come in. And so similarly with communities, I feel like there's that I'm new to the community. In this case, the product or service, the Genesis community, I'm just learning this. So please, can someone help me answer this question or figure out how to do this thing? Through the course of time, months, years, whatever, those people start to become proficient in your product or service. And then sort of as like a rite of passage or a pay it forward mentality, you find people who then realize, hey, I've gotten to this point on the benefit of people giving me their generous time and energy and effort and answers. And so then all of a sudden you kind of then are in the place of wanting to then pay it forward and then give it back to to, through the community to people, which only helps strengthen the brand, because now you've got, call them juniors in the sense of the street team. And then you've got seniors, not that we're like talking about an army, but there are, unofficial ranks. We'll just kind of call it that way. And so some of the people who ended up working for us at Studio Press and consequently Copyblogger were people who came in through the community, people who on their own just really loved the product and helped out as much as they could. And through all of that interaction, you could identify certain people who had skill sets in very specific areas. And so a few of the people who were early on in the Genesis community became employees of our company just kind of through their work and efforts. And so there's lots of dynamic there with the community. I do want to kind of get into a little bit around the whole idea of the recommended. And this is fresh in my mind because I just saw this question come through Twitter yesterday. The idea of like the recommended experts, or in the case of Genesis, the developers page, addressing a question I also wanted to get to, which is like, how do you foster and grow your community outside of, as you mentioned, people doing it themselves, like whether they are intentional or unintentional. For people who want to grow community as a business owner, one of those things is rewarding the people who are part of your community. And when we did that with Genesis, we had a recommended developers page, and we gave out a ton of freelance work to people because we weren't going to do it ourselves, and we wanted people to continue using our product. And so I know Divi, there's a whole, I thought I remember seeing it like a year ago, like a whole microsite, developers and designers or whatever. Were you one of them?
I was not. No, I never got into that. They also have like a cloud now. Like I said, I haven't been using Divi for like 3 years or so I'm not really sure where they are as far as that kind of community building. But yes, they did have like certified Divi people, and then like they have a way for you to kind of upload to like a marketplace, and then again that kind of creates community too, because then it's everybody kind of pulling from each other's visions and all that. So that's a little bit different. But I know that like a lot of products will offer some sort of like certification type thing because they want people to use their product. I know like Entreport is an example, or like a lot of CRMs, ActiveCampaign, et cetera, will create certification things that they've created for their product, so that someone could come in, say, I want to become certified in your tool, or like I think Asana has the same thing. And then they can go out, and then of course the tool or the product is then marketing for them. But at the end of the day, if someone becomes an Asana user, let's say, and then they hire an Asana expert, well, Asana is the one that ends up getting that, a new customer. So I think it's really smart from like a business perspective, but also again, from a community and human level, like you're empowering people to use your tool to then go off and make businesses. And then that just like compounds. So especially from like a business to business approach, if you have a product that serves other businesses, it's kind of like a no-brainer to set up something where you are either have like some sort of affiliate program, or you have a certified or recommended experts section of your community.
All right, we'll get to the affiliate thing in a second, because that is actually one of the questions I wanted to talk about. But before we get there, one of the things, another accidental byproduct of the Genesis community for us was, it's kind of like an adjacent thing to the recommended developers thing, was we actually allowed third-party themes to be created and sold also through Studio Press, because thanks to, was it Tim Ferriss and the 4-Hour Workweek or whatever? Was he the one behind that? Or
I think so.
Working for time isn't good enough, right? They also want to create products and then go to bed and wake up and make money. And so there were people who, through all of these relationships, and because we had built something that was easy to be built on top of, in other words, Genesis was a framework and we sold child themes, but then the community also expressed interest in saying, hey, if we created child themes for Genesis, would you help distribute them? Because we had a lot of traffic and a big brand and all of that. Not only do you have sort of the freelance version, the recommended experts, whether it's ConvertKit, Genesis, whatever, you also, and I think ConvertKit is starting to, I thought I saw like a CRM thing for ConvertKit where you realize it's kind of like the App Store, right? The Apple App Store, where people are building extensions and selling. WooCommerce is a huge example of this, where you allow and facilitate sort of the transactions of digital products that are built on your product. So that's another way to sort of foster and grow the community, is to have something that people can also build on top of. And then give them a way, of course, to get exposure as well as make money, transactional money, or even recurring money, which I know a lot of people are interested in.
And also just like as a plug, right? Because we both work at WP Engine. This makes me think of our agency partner program. We have like a similar setup where we have people, you can sign up and become an agency partner, and then you can get different levels. And then at a certain point, I can't remember which level it is exactly, but then you're exposed, your business is exposed in our like agency partner program section of our website, so people can go find a recommended WordPress developer agency through WP Engine. So I think that's a way that we do it at our company.
So you mentioned this earlier, and then you also made another. This is something I sort of feel. I have like a love-hate relationship with the idea and the words, because the words just, I don't know. For me, and I won't speak for anybody else, the word or the phrase affiliate program 15 years ago, 10 years ago was just the norm. That's what things were called. Hey, we have an affiliate program. That's kind of what it was. I don't love that word or term anymore. And I have some reasons, but I want to let you speak to that first. We're not talking about the concept of that. We'll get to that in a second. That's more of what you alluded to with WP Engine and the agency, and the partner is a good word. The affiliate programs, what does that make you think of?
I don't know. I don't have a negative relationship with the affiliate program term or like a referral program, because that was actually how I got into WordPress. I started a blog about DIY stuff, and then we became like a share a sale affiliate. Like we got into that program. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but where you can like recommend, I think they pretty much go across the board, but like we were creating DIY tutorials. And so we had like the AdSense thing for making money through Google ads, but then also through, someone going and clicking our link, whatever. So that was like my first start. And then when I started my blog about children's books, then I got into the Amazon affiliate program, and I was like, it was just such an easy, smart way for me to be like, here's my content. I'm not going to give you any ads and get stuff in the way. I want to talk about these books. If you end up buying it, cool. You still pay the same amount. I get, like it was just so obvious to me. And I thought that was such a lucrative part of my business for so long. And then even as a developer, like I just pulled that through for so many years, because as a freelance developer, I became an affiliate of multiple WordPress related stuff. I've been a Divi affiliate for forever. That's obvious to me too, right? It's just like, I love this tool. Here's how to use this tool. If you want to buy it through me. So I don't know. I have a really good relationship, I think, with the terms affiliate. And now I know there's like the influencer space, which I'm this is kind of like an admission, but like I love those ASMR videos of people like restocking their fridges and their houses on YouTube. And I know it's just littered with like Amazon affiliate links and people just like buying stuff and then sending it back and, earning commission off of people's love of more and overconsumption. So like, I'm not a big fan of that. But otherwise, as far as like running a business, I love the idea of affiliate programs, and I have no bad taste in my mouth about even the term.
Well, what you just said is a two-part thing. You addressed the idea of it, the concept of the program, and then the term, which to me are two different things, because I fully understand. I grew up in the land and space of affiliate programs, and that's what everything was called back in the day. And I can't help but like hear the word affiliate, and immediately I think of, and I'm dating myself here, Shoe Money and Ringtone. Guy made gobs of money recommending ringtones as an affiliate. And so when I hear that,
I've never heard of that in my life.
It's true. Google it. It was a thing back in the day. And so I think affiliate is sort of like, it just brings me back to like, Google AdSense, Yahoo Publisher Network, Digital Point forums. And like, I just think of all of sleazy is not the right word, because there were people who abused affiliate programs and recommended things only because they were able to game SEO. And so I kind of look back at the history of the word affiliate, and I kind of just get a little bit of a taste in my mouth. And I think the tech industry as a whole has sort of compensated for that by kind of shifting over to using words like you use, like the referral program or the partner network or whatever. It seems a little more, I don't know, less.
It's like collaborative too. Like I think that the terms like partner make you feel like this is not just me giving you a link and then you're like out in the wild to go talk about it. Like I'm going to give you the resources to be successful. And like those are the most successful affiliate programs for the business and for the affiliates will be anything that is like a win-win as far as like, here's a bunch of resources to go and sell my product essentially, and to make you successful. I had an affiliate program for my, I used to sell Divi website templates essentially, and they were called effortless website kits. And I had an affiliate program, and that thing was awesome. Like, I just had other people who liked my websites that I built. They became affiliate partners. I think I offered like a really good percentage too. And it was very much a partnership. I like provided them resources and imagery and copy and tried to make it so that they would be successful as, you know, people in my community, but then I would be successful as well, by selling my products. So I'm such a big fan of referral programs.
As I think back to Genesis and the day, one of the Genesis developers and theme creators was a girl named Sarah Dunn. I don't know if you're familiar with Sarah or not. I believe actually she lives in the same state you do. Sarah used to just be a Genesis developer and do all kinds of websites. And she found herself inside of a particular niche, the wedding industry. And so it's been fun to watch her. I actually did a podcast with her. I think it was on studiopress.fm several years ago, where we sort of talked about like the evolving nature of her just general business and focus into, you know, I think it originally started through her passion for SEO, but through that she found the wedding industry. As I was on her site, Sarah does SEO, earlier today, I was looking through and just like looking at all of the products and services. She offers a whole bunch of stuff for obviously the wedding industry. And so as you untangle that, I'm like, okay, as we talked about, how do you foster and grow a community? Well, you have several products that you sell. Maybe you have some courses, and maybe you have some digital downloads, and maybe you have a service-based aspect to it. But what she's also done is she's got up in front of people. And so she's got a speaking element that's part of her marketing. And as I think about it, I'm like, well, how big can the wedding industry be? Well, first of all, it's huge. Just if you think about all the people getting married,
Yeah.
and it's one of those industries that'll always be, right? Like education is another one. There'll always be people that go to school, and there will always be people who will get married. So it's not like a niche that will come and go. And I'm like, okay, that's the first check for why you should follow a niche like that. But as I was looking through, I think it's on her homepage, she talks about this. I was like, okay, well, it's just wedding photographers that she's going after. So that's okay. But then I realized, if you read her copy, so you've got wedding industry, so you got wedding planners, you got wedding photographers, wedding venues,
The florists, the people that do the makeup, like it's a whole industry.
Yes. And so I realized, I'm like, okay, so she's got 5 different sort of sub audiences, all under wedding, and all of whom need to learn about SEO so that they can build their business. And so she speaks now at wedding conferences. And I can only imagine she has a community of wedding, we'll call them professionals, who follow her work, who buy her stuff, who support her and champion her stuff, and likely refer her to other colleagues and things like that. It's fascinating. So to have a group of people, a group of professionals, it's sort of a vetted way to ensure that you've got people who are prepared to spend money and likely will because they want to build their business. Talk to me a little bit about your website making magic and stuff like that, the people who sort of started to follow Sam, and whether you want to call it a community or not. How did that kind of come about, and what did you do to ensure that these people sort of stayed with you along the way?
Yeah, it's interesting that it's like there's so many evolutions of my business, and I think back and I'm like, well, if I would go back and do it differently, there's definitely things that I would have just cut, but it was a lot of experimentation, and I think that's just business, right? I never offered outside of let's see, I offered the effortless website kits, which was my only product that I ever really put out there, and I did create kind of a community space around that. So I can touch on that in a second. But I would say that, like, in general, when I ran my business, I just tried a bunch of different things, right? And the most successful at the end of the day, from both a time perspective as well as money, was actually just building websites. Like, that was just, I tried so many different like scaling things, but building websites for clients kind of one-on-one was ultimately like the best for my particular business. However, selling the products, as you said before, the whole 4-hour work week and, making passive income, very enticing. And I did really, really enjoy that aspect of the business. So I mentioned I started in a group where it was like basically all moms that ran businesses, and I built community there. Okay. And that was the only social media that I had. It was Facebook, and I used it strictly for business and strictly for like talking to people. I didn't have Instagram or Twitter or any of these things because I was like, I'm a service provider. I don't really need to be like teaching people how to do stuff. I just need to like find clients, build them stuff, they'll refer me. Like that was my method for a really long time. And I think that that was the most successful for my particular business. But when I started to sell these products, like it was necessary to share like the behind the scenes or talk about the products in like a more one to many approach. So the whole like building community, having a referral network is very kind of one to one. But when you are starting to promote an actual product and then build community around that product, or start to pull people in or create an affiliate program or whatever, you really need to have like a more like a broader approach, which social media, email lists, things like that give you access to. That's what I started doing finally. I created an Instagram and I taught people how to do things with my website kits, right? So my product, I taught people how to do stuff. I think I made either a Facebook group or like a Mighty Networks group for people that had purchased the kits or even were interested. I think it was either. And then again, they'd show each other how they did stuff, or I created this new page with the website kit, or I have a question, or do giveaways. Like all of the things were really centered on like the product itself. And I think that it wasn't ever like a huge bustling community, and that was okay because like I said, for me personally, I realized like maybe this isn't the route I want to go as far as like having a product in a community and that stuff. I was much more interested in like just teaching people how to do web development, which is why I started a podcast and all that stuff about like websites, but that's not necessarily a product. But anyway, hope that answered your question. Is when I think back, I'm like, gosh, you tried so many different things, which is just a part of running a business. You try and you fail, or you try and you learn. You go from there.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about as I was just kind of thinking through all of this, and I was going to ask about, but I want to pivot away from the question, is there a difference between having a community of users versus a community of advocates, which I guess is more like the product consumers versus people who are on your, we'll call them your street team or whatever. But when you were talking, it dawned on me, and this is where I want to sit in the last part of the show today is we talked about your product or service needs a community, but I'm like, well, there are some other models of revenue or businesses that exist that are actually communities themselves. That actually
Yeah.
is the value. So it's almost like, does your community need a community in a sense? Because I think of the Rockstar community led by Julia Taylor, formerly known as Geek Pack, and a lot of our friends on Build Mode and
Mhm.
otherwise have kind of come through this. And I guess she has like some courses and things like that. So maybe education is sort of another aspect of community building. But her bread and butter, Julia's bread and butter, is the Rockstar community. That is her thing. And so inside of that, you have a community of, as she calls them, geeks, go-getter coders, designers, virtual assistants, and highly ambitious folks willing to solve problems. Her Facebook group has 1,300 members, which is not a small community, and they've all presumably paid something. So there's that. But what I love about that community is that is a very active community. If you go in there, it's like every day there's several new posts. And similarly, with Genesis in the early days, people go in there to learn how to become I think kind of back in the early stages of Geek Pack, it was like during like the girl boss or the mom boss stage of the internet, where
Yeah.
you had people who were maybe people who were looking for extra income, and so they
Mhm.
were trying to learn online. And you can learn two ways. You can go on like LinkedIn Learning and just do something that's a little more, Udemy or whatever, and just go learn on your own, or you can learn sort of through a course and or community. And that's where Julia, her community shines, because it's such a similar to the fraternity sorority thing. You come in as an early person who doesn't know what you're doing. You ask a bunch of questions, you learn a bunch of things, and all of a sudden you realize you're knowledgeable. And I remember I even talked to her about this as well one time. One of my favorite things in her community is watching people do a post in Facebook group that says something like, I got my first client today. And thank you, ladies or men or whomever, thank you, community people, for helping me gain the confidence and all of this stuff. And that's sort of like the secret ninja approach, is getting people, as I mentioned earlier, who can, start a business and change their life through your product or service or community. And that is where like these devout, loyal tribes really form. And hers
Yeah.
is definitely one of them. Okay, so I know, Sam, you were never part of the Rockstar community. You had a community of your own that I know that you kind of came up and through. You want to talk about that for just a minute?
One thing about this whole conversation is I'm really thinking about like the person who is like, well, I'm not really interested in starting my own community. I'm a WordPress developer or a agency owner or whatever, and I want to like be a part of a community. Like, how is that beneficial and all of that? So I if you don't mind, talking about that a little bit. Like, I was a part of a community called Boss Mom. I think I mentioned that on our last podcast, and that was when I was just I had a full-time job as a software developer, and I was blogging on the side about children's books. And I went to like an in-person event for that group, and I met a bunch of people, and I started making lots of connections. Just like, I don't know, I had like grand visions for my my blog, and I created like a website, kind of like a Goodreads for children's books. But then I ended up getting a call from my boss. It's like my whole my whole what is the term? My origin story for my business. So like I got a call from my boss. He's like, our biggest client closed down, so we're probably I have to let everybody go anyway. So they did close their doors. But I was like, okay, this is an opportunity. I have a community. I have a group of people who know that I know how to build a website, because I realized through building my own blog, I'm like, oh wait, it's actually like the website building stuff that I really enjoy, and less like the blogging about children's books and motherhood and whatever. So when I was about to be laid off from that job, I went into that Boss Mom community, and I think I still have on my computer somewhere a screenshot of my very first message, but it was like, hey everybody, this is happening. I've been a part of this community for 2 years. You all know that I have been, just kind of giving WordPress advice and whatever over the years. If you need any help with your website and you're looking to hire someone, reach out to me. And that was it. Like, my first year in business was incredibly successful, 100% due to having been in a community myself. And so for anyone listening who's like, well, I don't really want to start a community necessarily, but like I'm in a couple, like it is worth your time and effort to build those relationships, because like when we say community, it's not just like this nebulous weird thing. It's like made up of real people with real needs, and you could potentially fill those needs. So no, I was not part of the Geek Pack community or Rockstar, but the Boss Mom one, I mean, it was like the stepping stone to like the rest of my business. And then ultimately to me starting to work at WP Engine on all of that too. So it's pretty cool to think about how much community really does matter as far as building any sort of business.
That's a good point. I know the phrase goes, the two best days to plant a tree are 20 years ago and then today. Similarly, as was your case, sometimes the best time to get into a community is when you don't immediately need the community. You had said you had given 2 years worth of your time and energy before you actually needed to sort of pull the card, right? Like, yep. I'm here and now I need help. And it circles back to the Greek system thing, sort of essentially paying your dues, right? Like, hey, you have proven value to this community, and so therefore you have the right to ask it for something back, in a sense. And so I think as a member of a community, I know we focused a little bit more on product owners and service-based providers. Why having a community is important. You also have to consider the people who are in that community. And as you mentioned, many people who are in communities don't want to start their own, or maybe they don't intend to start their own. Maybe they form their business or product and end up having a community of their own because they became so successful. And those are great stories to tell as well. So any parting words for people, whether they are product builders or service-based companies and or freelancers that want to cultivate a community, in terms of just things to look out for, or a couple of like little helpful hints that you've just experienced over the years that maybe would be helpful for folks?
I would just say, I think I might have said this on our last podcast, but business is all about people. You're selling to people, you're interacting with people. And so trying to keep that human component alive as much as possible, I think is so valuable, in especially in a world of like AI and just like, less and less human connection. If your community that you're in or you're a part of can maintain humanity and maintain excitement from like a person to person level, I think that that's where you find really thriving opportunities, and you get people excited about your product because they're other human beings, unless just like something that an AI chatbot could pull out. You're talking to other people. I just think like making community fun, making it human centered is where conversation really sparks. I mean, some of my most popular things on Twitter or inside of my communities have always been like about people. Think about that, especially in a tech space. Like, think about how you can always include like the human element in whatever it is that you are working on or trying to build.
Very well said. And you've walked yourself into a Jerry Maguire moment for us here on Press This, where we do talk about the people, the power of relationships, and all of that. I am thankful for the relationship you and I have. I am thankful for the community passion you have as well as I do. I'm also thankful that you've blessed us with your knowledge and wisdom. These first couple episodes, as I've sort of taken the reins of the Press This podcast, and I'm going to head off into the community of WordPress and find folks to have on the show. But you have been a wonderful guest. Thank you for giving us 2 episodes. Again, we are here at Press This, a community-driven, community-focused podcast where we talk about insights and actionable tips for navigating the ever-evolving world of WordPress. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Feel free to leave us a review, hopefully a positive one, because that's what we're here for, is making a positive impact on the WordPress community as a whole. Thanks for listening and have a great day.